Hi everyone. So I decided to stick with Chesapeake Bay Foundation for my community, and through the searches that mirrored what we saw in our lecture, I found some pretty obvious topics of interest, as well as a few new interests and concerns that I wasn't completely aware of before. And so the obvious would be, the cleanup efforts, conservation practices, and the fact that there's a ton of pollution. There's also the action catalysts, which are kind of new to me in some regards, like the Chesapeake Bay Clean Water Blueprint, which I didn't know existed, which I'll get into in a little bit. And the clean water and other legislations, at least in Maryland, because that has the bulk of the estuary of Chesapeake Bay. And education comes in with, like I said before, the EPA gives a health report card of the bay, and so the foundation uses that as a education point, a teaching moment, to say, hey, we got a D on the health of the bay. We need to up the ante on our efforts. And the Chesapeake Bay Foundation definitely is telling you what the opponents are saying and doing, so that they can spark some more interest and advocacy and volunteerism. For example, the CBF noted that Baltimore law firm Funk and Bolton undermines Bay cleanup efforts, writing that its, quote, dirty water team is trying to convince rural Maryland counties to avoid contributing to cleanup, end quote. So they're trying to use that as a motivation to say, hey, these people are trying to stop and hinder what we're trying to do, so we need to counteract that, which brings you to what can you do with their quasi-recruiting, as I say, for donors, volunteers, spreading the word more, like I had described in my earlier presentation, with the education and tactics using for example, when the kids go on a field trip. I went on one when I was in I think 5th grade, but I remember going down to Annapolis and doing all that stuff. So it's a good way to kind of plant that seed early and into more minds. Going further into the pollution, because there's such high pollution, there's no fish. You can't really swim in the bay, especially in the inner harbor in Baltimore, because it's really dirty and gross. And the septic situation had gotten to such a high point that Governor Martin O'Malley even proposed legislation to ban it or restrict it, which I'll get into in a little bit. But meeting the blueprint benchmarks is something that I didn't really know was a thing, and in fact, this past September, Virginia's cleanup funds were revoked because they didn't have a good enough progress with their regulation. As you can see in the little screen cap here, that the regulators weren't satisfied with the state's efforts to address stormwater pollution, so they revoked the federal funding for their restoration projects. And that's something that's of concern, because proponents for the cleaning the bay, this is really important for them to be able to tackle these projects, and if they don't have the funding, then it makes it that much harder to accomplish. Now, this screen cap is actually my senior project from college, as you see, Towson University over here. And as I said before, Governor Martin O'Malley had proposed a septic ban in early 2011. He literally said 2 sentences about it, which is what sparked my interest. I was thinking, this is a huge thing to just nonchalantly mention in your State of the State address to ban septic tank usage in an entire state that's very rural in a lot of places and uses many septic tanks of all shapes and sizes in many different types of developments throughout the entire state. So it was interesting to, my senior year, to look into the good and the bad and everything in between. And so that's, another topic of interest, like this type of pollution and how it'll affect and benefit or not benefit. I would say that the most popular platform that the Bay uses when it comes to social media is definitely Facebook, and then Twitter would come in second. As you can see here, and what I mentioned before, there's well over 20,000 likes or followers on Facebook, and they're definitely end counting, because I think 2 weeks ago when I did my first presentation on them, it was closer to 21,000, 22,000, or something along those lines. I'm not 100% sure at this very second, but as you can see, it's even more here. And then also with Twitter, they have over 8,000 followers, and and I think that not only the amount of followers and fans that they have, but because the foundation is able to use these platforms as a way to promote their special events and some incentives that they have. They can post pictures of volunteers working. I think that's really where the power in these two social media platforms comes into play, and especially because they are so popular, just Facebook itself and Twitter itself. So there are so many people already on it. And also on their website, or on their Facebook page, it said that 980 people are talking about this. So I guess using Facebook's search functions and stuff, they're able to see how many people are actually mentioning the Bay and the Bay Foundation throughout Facebook. And like I said, Twitter has over 8,000 followers. And they converse with many other like-minded groups, especially Chesapeake Bay related ones, so that they kind of all work together for the same specific cause, which makes their reach even greater. Now, I was kind of surprised that YouTube wasn't as big, I guess. I mean, granted, their video views for all 86 of their videos that they have on their channel reaches over 100,000, but they only have 204 subscribers. So that's kind of where I get a little surprised there, but I guess with YouTube it's a little different. Views are might be counted more than subscribers. And then they also have a presence on Pinterest, but it's not their own Pinterest profile. But I just did a quick search for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and here you can see their headquarters building, which I've been to, and it's really cool. But you can also see different pictures of projects and such like that. And over here it's kind of cut off, but there were plenty of wedding pictures and stuff. So that's another way that people can share and learn more about the foundation and all that fun stuff. There really wasn't too much that I was surprised about, because I had already been somewhat familiar with this community, but it really is a lot more far-reaching than I guess I realized as well, because when I started searching for things, I saw how many followers they really do have, and also the different related groups and such. And you know, like it says here, I was learning more new things. Like there's an impaired water list from the EPA, which makes sense, but I guess I just didn't really think about it. And one reason why I put it here was because Susquehanna River, one of the longest rivers around, or at least in America, I think. Ooh. Well, anyway, that runs from you know, I believe up in New York is where it starts, but it definitely runs through Pennsylvania, and I cross over it on a bridge on my way down to Maryland all the time, and that feeds right into the bay, and that people are calling for that to be added to the impaired water list. So that's something that people want to pay attention to and are interested in learning about. And the oysters, that was kind of interesting to me as well, because with the oysters, they had a natural habitat in the Bay Area, but then after more pollution occurred, and there was disease, and the habitat was disrupted, and also the over harvesting of oysters, because any seafood fan out there knows that oysters are pretty delicious. So they work to I guess grow is the right word, oysters in a secured, like, little cage type thing. It's dipped into the water, so they're still in water, obviously. And then when they grow about 9 months, I think, they take those more mature oysters and put them into secured reefs, so then they can grow and do their oyster things in the water. And one thing that I definitely didn't know existed was this Chesapeake Conservation Corps, which I think is actually pretty cool. Their first class was in the fall of 2010, and they tend to they have some funds, federal funds, and the Chesapeake Bay program, I believe, matched their grant that they received, and then there was some extra aid, so they can go out there and do some new projects, and they're considered volunteers, although they are receiving a $16,000 stipend plus benefits, so they're able to have these green type jobs, and also are learning themselves, and helping the Bay Foundation. Some of the key influencers are definitely the CBF creators, like the employees, volunteers, donors, and legislatures, the EPA, and other related communities and groups, such as the Chesapeake Bay Trust, very similar to the Bay Foundation, because they are dedicated to restoring the bay by, as they say in their little bio here, improving shorelines, planting trees, and engaging the communities around the watershed that expands from Maryland to Virginia and Pennsylvania and Delaware. The Chesapeake Bay program, like I just mentioned, they have a good presence on YouTube, and they have a very informative website. Like I said, the Chesapeake Conservation Corps, they use Facebook, from what I've seen, to talk about the different projects that they do, and promote the good stuff that they're doing and accomplishing, which I think is kind of neat. Gives people an idea of what ways they can use to also contribute and help with the environmental cause. And yeah, so Chesapeake Bay has there's a lot to it, and I think I covered it all for now. Okay, thanks.